You want to know how you can avoid burnout? Stop trying to run at everybody else's pace and run at God's pace. Productivity culture has taught us that we should do all we can while we can, and anything less than that means that we're slacking or that we're lazy. But that's simply not the truth. The Bible tells us that all flesh is like grass, and its beauty is like the flower of the fields. The grass withers and the flower fades. What that says is that anything that is natural will eventually fade. Sure, you may be able to sustain an impressive amount of productivity for a season or for a couple of seasons. Unless you're plugged into the right power source, you'll eventually burn out. So, what is that power source and how do we get plugged in? Well, Isaiah teaches us that God is the source of our strength. Isaiah says this, He gives strength, or He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no strength, He increases their might. Our power, our strength comes from God, but how do we get plugged into God's power? How do we tap into that supernatural power that only God can supply? Well, it's simple. We have to learn how to wait on God. But they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. I think that is the thing that many of us are missing, is that we often get in such a hurry that we begin to outrun God. And the further we get from the power source, the weaker we become. It's tempting, especially as a young person, to get in a hurry. Sometimes we want to try to outrun the unhurried pace of God's will. But if we want to create something, if we want to have sustainable ministry, sustainable careers, sustainable businesses, if we want to be able to sustain the type of energy that we start with, we've got to learn how to start with and finish with God. You know, especially as a young person, I'm often tempted to try to run ahead of God, to do all that I can while I can, to get as much as I can get while I can get it. But that's simply not a healthy method to endeavoring in anything. We need God's strength. God has to sustain us if we're going to avoid burnout. So how do we possess this strength? How do we sustain this strength? How do we keep this same energy? Well, it's real simple. We have to learn how to wait on God. We've got to exchange the natural for the supernatural. And in order for us to do that, we have to learn that life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not about getting there first, it's about getting there on time. And by on time, I mean God's time. And if we want to prevent burnout, if we want to prevent quitting, if we want to keep ourselves sustained in a healthy way in order that we can work to the glory of God, then we've got to learn that running this race and all of life is about waiting on the will of God. God bless you.